Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this special online session today where we are celebrating the success of G20 and some of the people behind it, like Mr. Muktesh Pardeshi. He has been one of the pivotal people managing the logistics, operations, and the entire operations for G20. And we are very privileged to have him with us today. And on that note, first, an official apologies to Mukteshji. It was our error in terms of daylight saving. We didn't realize a change of time. So sorry, sir, to rush you up in the morning. We have to make it up with you now. Sorry for that. But the love that you have for New Zealand people is such. When we asked people that you want to wait, they all said they've just voted. We will wait for half an hour, no problem. So thank you so much. With that, I will quickly introduce our chairperson, Michael Fox, who will give the opening remarks and when we start. Michael is the chairperson of the India-New Zealand Business Council, and he's also ZESPRI's head of global public affairs, whose team has responsibility for ZESPRI's global communications, government and international relations, trade advocacy, policy and regulatory portfolios, as well as the community investment and tours and events. He and his team have responsibility for supporting communities and creating an environment to help the industry to fulfill its growth through positive energy and advocacy, and building the New Zealand's kiwi fruit industry's reputation as one which makes a positive impact on communities and stakeholders around the world. Michael holds a number of advisory roles, including sitting on the New Zealand International Business Forum and Export New Zealand Advisory Board. He joined ZESPRI after working in Parliament as a Press Secretary and Chief Press Secretary to former Prime Minister Sir John Key, Sir Bill English, and opposition leader Simon Bridges. Prior to that, he was a working journalist in Wellington, Auckland, Egypt, and Cambodia. So with that, I welcome Michael. Over to you for your opening remarks.
Thank you, Gaurav, and hello, everyone. It's fallen to me to make some introductory remarks, so I just have a few acknowledgements I will run through first. But firstly, thank you for your patience and for being here today to support this discussion and to hear from, obviously, our very eminent friend, Mr. Pardeshi. Can I start by acknowledging Her Excellency Anita Bhushan and her team, who can't be with us today, as they are hosting Dr. Rajkumar Rajan Singh, India's very eminent Minister of State for External Affairs, during his visit. So it's really neat to have the Minister here. We had the privilege of meeting him recently in India, and it's really great to see that level of engagement in New Zealand. So just to acknowledge the Minister as well. So in Sachinand, Ned and your team from the Central Indian Association, Sandeep and our partners, BNZ, ZESPRI, the University of Auckland, JUCO Consultancy, Immigration Advisor, GINA, and New Zealand Airline Academy. And finally, certainly most importantly today, can I acknowledge you, our very special guest, Special Secretary Muktesh Pardeshi. It's really nice to have you here, fresh off the immense success of India's hosting of the G20. Thank you for taking the time today and obviously accommodating us with that change in daylight saving. Though you were here for several years, so perhaps you should remember that New Zealand's daylight saving. But no, this is our issue, and we apologise. The Mr. Pardeshi is obviously known to us as India's former High Commissioner to New Zealand, and you were, Mr. Pardeshi, a huge advocate for the relationship, and there was a huge amount achieved in your time here. Can I say how nice it is to attend the High Commission in India, which was obviously finished during your time here. It's a beautiful facility. And it's also great to have such a close friend of New Zealand doing so well back in India. We've all watched with real delight as India has delivered such an impressive event. And also, can I acknowledge the efforts of your successor, Anita Bhushan, for her efforts in taking the relationship forward. We're very encouraged by it. It feels like it has real momentum, particularly in the last little while, and it's really exciting for us who are focused on strengthening that relationship. So we're here to hear from you today about G20. We can only imagine how difficult this challenge was, how much went into organising it when the whole world is there, and obviously some of the most important people in the world there as well. So a huge challenge, but an incredible success. So we're looking forward to hearing from you about the delivery of that, but also what it means to people like us. So, what it means for the world. So thank you very much for your time. We're really looking forward to hearing from you today. And with that, I'll pass back to Gary.
Thanks, Michael. I'll quickly go into the formal introductions, and we would like to hear more, give more time to Muktesh ji and hear from him actually. Um, uh, I think all of you in the room would, most of them I see are from New Zealand. So definitely they are totally aware of Mr. Pardeshi, but just formal a note on that. So Ambassador Muktesh Pardeshi is currently Special Secretary and heads the operations and logistics of India's G20 Presidency Secretariat. From July 2019 to July 2022, as we all know, he was the High Commissioner of India to New Zealand. He was also concurrently accredited as the High Commissioner to Samoa, Vanuatu, Niue, and the Cook Islands. Ambassador Pardeshi is a career diplomat who joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1991. He served as the Ambassador of India to Mexico from April 2016 to 2019, June, and he was also concurrently accredited as the High Commissioner to Belize. During his tenure, the India-Mexico trade increased 75% due to his efforts. At headquarters, Shri Pradeshi was Joint Secretary and Chief Passport Officer of India between 2010 to 2016. Under his leadership, the transformation of Passport Services of India is a thing which is legendary now. As the mission leader of Passport Seva project, he received numerous accolades, and he continues his great work with giving a high name to India in G20. Also, we have with us Sandeep Sharma. Sandeep is the moderator for today's session. Sandeep Sharma is the CEO of Quality New Zealand Education, part of the Quality New Zealand Group. His company facilitates quality New Zealand education services into South Asia and the Middle East. Prior to this, he worked as the Regional Marketing Manager at the University of Canterbury, responsible for international marketing and business development. He's worked in his family business of air conditioning and refrigeration in India. Outside his role in the international education, Sandeep is also the chair of the New Zealand Institute of International Affairs, NZICA for Christchurch, and the Christchurch head of INZBC, the India New Zealand Business Council. So over to you, Sandeep and Muktesh ji. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Kia koto and namaste, everyone. Namaste, Muktesh. At the outset, I'd like to mention that this online event on India's G20 presidency is primarily being organized to demystify the existence, operations, and outcomes of the G20 summit for members of the Indian diaspora here in New Zealand residents who are not subject matter expert. So now for the next 15 minutes, you all would hear me interviewing Muktesh ji on his journey in the G20 summit, which will be followed by Q&As from the audience, which Gary will help us navigate through. We really encourage our audience today to ask questions. This is your opportunity. So my interview is going to be really limited, almost prompting those questions and thoughts in your mind, which will follow the interview session of around 15 minutes. I'll start with a quick background about G20 and its history for those who might be new to this topic. A G20 was founded in 1999 after the Asian financial crisis as a forum for the finance ministers and central bank governors to discuss global economic and financial issues. Now, G20 was upgraded to the level of head of states and government in the wake of the global economic and financial crisis of 2007. So, primarily being born out of economic needs and financial crisis, the G20 summit is held annually under the leadership of a rotating presidency. Now, India holds the presidency of G20 from 1st of December 2022 until 30th of November 2023. The group does not have a permanent secretariat. The presidency is supported by the Troika, which means the previous, current, and incoming presidency. So this year in India's presidency, the Troika will comprise of Indonesia, which held the presidency previously, India, which is the current president, and Brazil, which will be hold the presidency respectively after India. A bit about India's G20 presidency. Now, the theme of India's G20 presidency is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, or One Earth, One Family, One Future, which is drawn from the ancient Sanskrit text of Maha Upanishad. Now, In G20 summit, we have various tracks, primarily, as I mentioned, finance, and there's a Sherpa track. But there are also several engagement groups which bring together civil societies, parliamentarians, think tanks, women, youth, labor, business, and researchers of G20 countries together. You'll hear us dwell and talk a bit more about these engagement groups. India led various engagement groups, and I'd like to name a few of them over here. Business 20, Civil 20, Labor 20, Parliament 20, Science 20, Startup 20, Think 20, to name a few of them. These engagements have been highly consequential for the Indian people, especially the young population. Coming from the education industry, I know from my recent discussion with Muktesh ji in New Delhi on the sidelines of the India New Zealand Business Council summit, that the Ministry of External Affairs, under its G20 University Connect, organized over 100 lectures in more than 85 cities with the participation of over 500,000 students across India during the G20 presidency. So, Muktesh, my first question is a layman question to you: is why should a common person take interest in G20, and how will it benefit them? So it's just not about India, but I'm also talking about other citizens of the other G20 member countries. How is it consequential to us, apart from all the economic and financial decisions that have been going on, which eventually lead to financial crisis? But how does this impact us?
Thank you, Sandeep. First of all, I would like to thank Mr. Michael Fox, Mr. Gary Gupta, INZBC, and the Indian Central Association for putting together this introductory and experience sharing session with me. In fact, this idea was brought by Mrs. Hansa Naran a few months back when she was reading about, and I see her on the screen. I believe it's her 72nd birthday, so I would like to wish her a very happy birthday. I also see Sir Anand Satyanand, and I would like to convey my warmest greetings to him and all our friends. There are only I think I don't see any unfamiliar face. I have enjoyed your hospitality and good times, and we work together in developing India-New Zealand partnership to a higher level. Sandeep, to your question, I think there are three levels at which Indian people and people from outside, they relate to G20. First of all, within India, I think the country, after 75 years of independence, being the largest democracy and fifth largest economy, the population, the people are looking for a bigger role for India on the world stage. So G20 comes at a time when we have just celebrated 75 years of independence. And there are several achievements in different sectors, including science and technology, including summitry like the G20, which has created a sense of great positivism within the country. So they find G20 important because they think through this, India seeks a bigger role in world affairs, and we are prepared to do so. The second manner in which people are associating, that's the Prime Minister's personal vision to make and to convert a diplomatic event into people's movement. 2 days back, he addressed a group of 3,000 staff members and workers. Tomorrow, as you mentioned about University Connect, he's addressing the grand finale of the University Connect, which took us to 101 universities in India. So in the very beginning, it was conveyed to us that let's connect people with this diplomatic event. So it was left to Secretariat and the Ministry and other stakeholders to bring in people's participation by multiple manners. And today, when we are reviewing what has happened, no other country has ever even thought of making or converting a diplomatic summit into such a grand People's Connect program. For the first time, and not only in India, for the first time in anywhere in the world, a, a diplomatic event has happened in all federal constituents. So we have 36 states and union territories. We have had G20 meetings in all, including some of the states in which international audience take great interest, like Jammu and Kashmir, Ladakh, and Arunachal Pradesh. So without exception, we took G20 to all parts of the world. And results are there to see. People are attaching themselves with this diplomatic and multilateral event. So these are the two manners in which domestically India and people, younger people, could connect with what has happened and what is likely to happen over next 2 years. At the global level, when we took over the presidency, there are several fault lines. First of all, we're struggling with the post-COVID economic consequences. And then you have crisis in Ukraine, and the lack of trust between East and West and between North and South was very sharp. We are seeing a very polarized world. But here was an opportunity for India. India can straddle through different camps. And what the outcome document shows, the ability of India to make bridges, uh, uh, cover differences, and bring different parties to negotiating table in a manner that socio-economic issues are not lost out. In the very beginning, uh, we realized, Indian presidency realized that G20, we have to recover grounds because there is economic recession, there is a fallout of the COVID-19 crisis, the achievement of sustainable development goals, we are losing on that. And majority of the countries, they are interested on refocus being given to the attainment of sustainable development goals. This was laid also through the attention which Indian presidency gave on global south. So in January, we organized a summit, and this is also unprecedented. No G20 member country has ventured into having a consultative mechanism with 125 countries of the global south. See, it is one thing to claim voice of the global south. It is something else when you actually consult them and channelize their voice. So here, we wanted to consult them first. So in January, we hosted a virtual summit on the voice of the global south, having participation of 125 countries. And from there, the Indian presidency could distill some of the important priorities, out of which also came the conviction that unless we have the voice of Africa in the form of the membership of African Union as a permanent member, things will not be served. So now we have the full participation, permanent participation as a member of the African Union, and the decisiveness of the India came that this was adopted during the opening remarks itself. So the Indian presidency, under the leadership of Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi, had worked hard behind the scene to reach out to all member countries to garner their support. I would say more than support, their commitment to make this a possibility. So you can see when today people are rejoicing and complimenting India on its G20 leadership, I see one is the domestic connect, both in terms of its aspiration to be a voice on the global stage, domestically, how a diplomatic event can become a part of national life, and thirdly, at a global stage, how could India champion the voice of the majority of the country?
Thank you so much, Muktesh, for that um, explanation. Um, and I completely agree with you on that no other country has made a year-long festival out of this diplomatic event in the way India has done. And those of us who had the opportunity to be in New Delhi and this year has seen that. I remember us having a conversation around the hotels that we were living in were going to be taken over. Entire hotels were going to be taken over by each countries, and most hotels were booked out for those events. And I know that you had the responsibility of this logistics aspect and operational aspect of G20. So I want to move now into that aspect on what were the key responsibilities and challenges associated with hosting the G20 summit, and how did India prepare or go about preparing itself for this role? Because I know there was this robust machinery which was seamlessly working behind the scenes to put all these events throughout the year out there in the public arena and make it so successful. So, could you just take us through that journey?
Well, uh, most of people on the screen, they have India Connect. So they have seen facilities which are available, or the limitations of infrastructure you have seen yourself. In the 75-year history, we have not held many bigger events. Uh, Apart from some sports events like Asian Games in 1981, and some 13 years back, the Commonwealth Games. In terms of diplomatic events, we had in 83 a non-aligned summit, and the common CHOGM, the Commonwealth Heads of Governments meeting. And very recently in 2015, we had India Africa Summit. But we never had such a high profile event involving all P5 countries, all the leadership of the developed world, as well as the emerging economies. And the very fact that the Prime Minister had this vision to take in every corners. So in the beginning, it put enormous challenges on the organizing committee in finalizing the venues, and making assessment of what are the things available, what do we need to do. As it happened, since there were 60 locations covering all India, and I think this has this has given us a long-term experience. What has come out of dealing with the G20 is that today India can do anything in terms of bigger events, including the Olympics. So we, after building the team, we did a recce of all the states and union territories. Then you map the venues, the infrastructure requirements. And unlike New Zealand, we have a federal structure. We have several states and union territories, and many states are also ruled by opposition parties. Now, in this, I would say the political push from Prime Minister very helped. He spoke to, we had like this video conferences with all the chief ministers, governor, chief secretary. So his initial push was important for creating a kind of political push for us bureaucrats to take it further. So I think the one thing comes out very clearly. If there is a political will and political direction to make it happen, it will happen. The vision of the top leadership is very important. Wherever we had some infrastructural challenges, we started speaking to state governments or the cities and towns. We worked with them. If there's some conference facility has to be done, for example, I'll give you one example in Kumarakom, which is 1.5 hour drive from Cochin. There didn't exist. Very nice, beautiful place with many hotels, but there is no doesn't exist a conference center which can take 300 to 400 people. In 3 months, the state government delivered on the backwater a conference center, and that so when I landed for the final meeting, one of the my the taxi operator, he said he knew that I was heading this operational part. He says, I'm very thankful to you that you have brought this meeting. Thanks to that, we can benefit, look forward to more tourism. And now Kumarakom is put on the global map. So, so there are three kind of infrastructural issues come up. One is the physical infrastructure, the connectivity, whether it's road connectivity, air connectivity, or train connectivity. So in several places, it was upon us, the G20 Secretariat, to ferry delegates through special aircraft. So at least in 20 places, delegates will arrive in Delhi and they will be taken in complimentary. We'll provide the to and fro air journey from Delhi to, say, Lakshadweep, or Delhi to Ladakh, or Delhi to Diu. So this was done in order to facilitate and attract the participation of international delegations. Otherwise, if there are not many regular flights, then international delegate may have a sense of unwillingness to buy tickets for those places. And then what we decided to do, make apart from conferencing, we thought that let's visit of a delegate in any place of India make into a very wholesome and enjoyable experience. So the conferencing, the first C, was added by 3 more C's. We added on cultural exposure part. So for instance, Ran of Kutch. Going to Ran of Kutch itself is a beautiful experience. It's a different kind of geography. But what we did, we put it an excursion program. Thereby, they can go to Indus Valley civilization. So there was road connectivity done up and facilities created so they could go. So the culture, local cuisine, India has been promoting the usage of millets throughout this year. And we thought this is a good opportunity to do so. And the crafts, the local crafts. So if people attended a meeting in South or Gujarat, in Gujarat, we served only Gujarati thali. We wanted people to understand the local cuisine and crafts, bandhini and other art forms. If they went to Ran of Kutch, they will be exposed to the local milieu. So conferencing, culture, cuisine, and crafts, that made the whole experience of any delegation very worthwhile. So apart from contributing to deliberations of the G20 meetings, they have gone back, and roughly we have 100,000 delegates visited this year. It's a big number, and you have to imagine they are all decision makers. They are important voices. So it has the list includes the leaders, their spouses, ministers, Sherpas, national security advisors, and important delegates, including in the tourism sector. So I think by this manner, we converted all those challenges into huge opportunities for India.
So I would, as a moderator, take the discretion of not allowing you to speak about food, because your mention of the Gujarati thali, it just made me crave for that amazing Indian food, which I believe my Auckland friends can still get access to, but here in Christchurch, very limited options over here. But on a serious note, you made some really great points over there, sir. And one of the things that really stood out for me is when the leadership at the highest level has the will to do things, it can be done. And our Honorable Prime Minister Modi has shown us the way. Now that actually takes me to one of the diplomatic section questions over here. You spoke about the outcome document. Now we know, the ones who were following this summit very closely, that even in the last hours of the summit, people were suspicious that if there can be a joint declaration outcome to the summit or not. And we got to know through various media channels that Prime Minister himself intervened and spoke to few countries and parties and their premiers, which is why this outcome was possible. Now, my question to you is, how significant has been the agreement of this joint Delhi declaration? For those who don't understand the importance of it, how important was it for India to have this declaration where everybody was on board, people with varied interests, conflicting in some areas, complementing in the others?
Well, let me explain how does it work, the procedures. So in G20, there are more than 30 work streams, starting from financial matters to other socio-economic development issues. And usually the work program is spread over a year. So you will have for instance, if there was a working group on digital economy, so they met 4 times. So there were 4 working group meetings. And at the end of the 4th, they also had the ministerial meeting. So by July, August, we had completed all the meetings of the working group, the engagement group, and ministerial groups. They had adopted their summary, outcome document, and many times maybe the chair's summary. So, but all the important points, they are intended to be included in the summit, because at the end of the presidency, the summit communique, joint declaration, is an important document which enumerates what has happened in 1 year, and it also creates a roadmap for future presidency and for other forum as well. Now, the importance of the G20, the whatever is agreed here, and the member countries, they account for 85% of the global GDP. They have important voice. It's a premier economic forum. OECD is working closely with G20. So, for instance, the G20 communique would be important also for New Zealand, though New Zealand is not a member country, because some of the discussion points and some of the pathways, the roadmaps, it will filter through G7, OECD, and World Bank and IMF. So even if the countries may not be physically there on the high table, but they will be guided by what is being deliberated in G20. So it was important for India to have this joint communique. Otherwise, you feel that the whole the efforts have not reached the conclusion. Now, I would say more than 95% of the items, they were already agreed upon, including financial and socio-economic issues. It was difficult to get the final nod on some of the geopolitical paragraphs. As you know, in Bali, there were 2 paragraphs adopted. But in the meanwhile, member countries from different sides, they felt that a few things have happened, and those things should be reflected in the New Delhi Declaration. So what India, with the help of Troika, and the emerging economies, was able to reflect adequately the situation, geopolitical situation, and move on, because we felt that we have a unique responsibility to refocus on things like climate change or just energy transition, achievement of sustainable development goals, green development, women-led development. So the discussion on geopolitical should not derail the outcome on. Now, considering the weight and also the negotiating ability of India to reach out to different sides, and Honorable Prime Minister's own intervention, then our Foreign Minister was in touch with his counterparts. They were able to have an understanding, and in fact, the joint declaration was adopted on the first day itself. That itself is the unprecedented.
That's great, sir. I think our questions have given, and your answers rather, have given enough fodder for our audience to even start thinking and putting in their questions in the chat box already. What I would probably do now is maybe go to Gary and see if we have members in the audience who would like to address their questions directly to Muktesh.
So I will just request, thanks Sandeep. I will just request everyone, either they can put the question on the chat, or there is a button in the bottom called reactions, in which you can put up your hand. We can get your video in the front, so you can ask the question directly to Muktesh ji. So anyone who has a question. Stephen Jacoby saying he has to leave. Apologies, but thanks Stephen for joining us. One question that has come, Sandeep. What were Sherpas? What are Sherpas, please?
Sherpa, and I think the people in New Zealand can understand the significance of this phrase. For when in 1953 they climbed the Mount the Everest for the first time, Sir Hillary was assisted by Sherpa Tenjing. So Sherpa is a community with influence of the Tibet, and they help leaders in reaching up. So in G20, and I think in G7 and some other forum, Sherpas are considered a personal envoy of leader, because leader may not have time to directly get involved in negotiations over 1 year. So Sherpa is a kind of personal envoy of the leader who helps a negotiation on Sherpa track. Now I'll explain here. G20 emerged as a financial forum, and as Sandeep explained in the beginning, in '99. The economic crisis, and the finance ministers and central bank governors, they made to look into the financial matter, monetary policies, etc., etc. But in 2008, when we were faced with another round of financial crisis, it was the United States and the leaders, the G7 leaders, convened a meeting at the leaders level. That happened in Washington. Thereafter, it was felt that there would be a great value in not only dealing with 7-8 financial matters, but also issues relating to climate change, digital economy, health, culture, tourism. So Sherpas look after and they coordinate the work of some 12, 13 work streams. So this time there were 13 work streams which were under Sherpa track, and there were 8 issues being deliberated under the finance track. For example, crypto assets will be discussed by finance ministers and central bank governors, but the financial impact on health after COVID-19 will be taken up under Sherpa track. So Sherpas have a coordinating role in taking up these matters with different line ministries, and there are several line ministries involved in that. So Sherpas are personal envoy to leaders.
So next we have Bhaba, Sandeep. Bhaba, you can unmute yourself and you can ask a question directly.
Yeah. Sorry. Actually, I'm using my husband's Zoom. So I'm Arpita. And and this is my little one, Advik. So, Muktesh, good to see you after a gap of few years and lots of new faces as well. I'm keen to know in terms of, because it involves G20, obviously included the African Union, which is a very big deal. So in your diplomatic expertise, do you see this as an evolution of the non-aligned movement of which India and subsequently Indonesia were leaders? So do you think this inclusion of African Union and coming very close to the fact that we're talking about a new world order, that do you think the G20 actually and the global south overall evolving the non-aligned movement and bringing that back into the fold for economic and political discussions?
Well, G20 came out of G7, and there are many economic issues. So I don't think that it will be converted into a non-aligned movement. Non-aligned movement was principally a political forum in the wake of the ongoing Cold War there, because these countries wanted to remain neutral in the many situations which were evolving, and they wanted to focus on the developmental matters. G20 is essentially an economic forum. What is important is the economic issues of the global south will be taken up vigorously. There is no doubt about it. For instance, I'll give you one example. The climate change. We always talk about who is going to, put in more resources, but many times the sharing of the finances, more focus on climate financing, and access to clean technologies. These are very dear to the global south. So when we talk about climate justice, it's not only about, there is adaptation, there's mitigation, but at the same time, we need higher access to finance and cleaner technology. So what happens when you have emerging economies and the global south present there? And over next 4 years, this is also unprecedented. All presidencies are from the emerging economies, starting from Indonesia, India, Brazil, and South Africa. So you will see there'll be more focus on issues which were not highlighted when developed countries were chairing the forum. So I think that's the nuanced approach you will see.
Yeah. So there's a question from Monisha Morar. In parts, I think you've already answered it in your previous answer, the importance of India's climate change policy in global context. But there's a follow-up question as well, as to, were there any work streams which you feel India had substantial foothold in?
Yes, we inherited the agenda from the Troika, but India also added its own national voice. And one example I can give you, that is focus on digital transformation. How a developing country can develop or leapfrog through introduction of technologies in several sectors. So throughout 1 year, we promoted the usage of digital technology and what we call digital public infrastructure. You have seen during last 10, 15 years, we have created digital platforms like Aadhaar or UPI and many others, which had made financial inclusion possible. So the other day, Mr. Nandan Nilekani was speaking to a group, and he said what India has achieved in 9 years through this means of digital inclusion, it would have taken 47 years to achieve that progress. So here is one example, and we would like to share with the countries of the developing world that why don't you include some of these means and methods in supplementing your developmental experience. So this is one example, and there are several others, but this comes to my mind.
Great. There's another question from Parth. He asks, Mukteshji, how do you see G20 summits driving economic and social progress of the member states as well as non-member states?
There are multiple manners, but let me share with you that G20 is a diplomatic process. It intends to create guidelines, high principle, create consensus, evolve pathways and a roadmap. So many times, very tangible outcome may not be visible to analysts. But when you look ahead, then you will see some of the things, some of the discussions which were done under one presidency will have the impact. So, but in some G20 meetings, for example, a few years back, when there was a concrete decision on date suspension scheme in view of the COVID-19, that was a very immediate and concrete outcome. Those kind of things happens. But this year, those kind of very short-term decisions were not there. Most of the things are mid-term, long-term, where the guidelines have been created, where roadmaps have been agreed upon, and you will see its impact in due course. But domestically, we see instant impact. For instance, there has been a huge impact on hospitality and tourism sector within India. Now it's up to our industries, hospitality and tourism industry, to take off, because many times they were not venturing into new places. So when we have gone to remote places like Lakshadweep or Northeast or Diu, now the people are going to visit these places. So this will spur the development of tourism and hospitality industry, and I can see a direct and very immediate outcome coming to the country in tourism and hospitality sector.
Great. I think next up we've got a question from Anupam, which most of us want to know, honestly. He's asking, sir, we have been seeing you at all places, but always calm and smiling. On a personal level, how do you manage stress while leading such a high-stake event? And honestly, I think everyone wants to know the answer to this question.
Well, my approach in life has been take the job as a passion. So it's not 9 to 5:30 job. If you enjoy doing something, then the work is no more burdensome. And here I, like many other assignments, here I thought this was once again an opportunity to do something for the country, and that gives you kick to run all the time. It was 24/7 work, multiple WhatsApp group, and large coordination throughout the state. I would say, and I have mentioned this in some public forum, that apart from elections in India, no event is held at such a pan India scale. But you have to maintain calm, and if you are passionate about the work that you do, whatever comes your way, I think that's how we derive happiness from whatever we do.
That's a good answer. Love what you do, and you wouldn't work a single day in your life. To follow that up, I've got a good question from Michael Foxes here as well. probably easier to read it. Then Michael, would you want to? Oh yeah, cool. Michael asks, what did you learn from this event, and what do you do next, Mukteshji?
What do I learn? Two things. That is at national level. India has learned, including the leadership, that we have the ability to do bigger things. So ability to do big events at organizational level is one learning from this. And the second ability is of the diplomatic ability. Because before the summit, we had the aspiration to bring all together. After the summit, we have seen that ability bringing results and outcome. So this is one. The second one is we need to create in the country the capacity, and this again is coming from the Prime Minister himself. And now when I look back a year back, it was not spelled out like this, but wherever we started training programs. For example, we train Uber drivers, we train tourist guides, we trained the police constabulary. We trained anybody who was going to work for the G20. Now, I think the vision which the Prime Minister has, once we create this capacity in the country, the younger generation will be ready to take India to a next 25 years. So his foresight, I can see now when I retrospect that when we have engaged the younger people, we have trained them, we have shared our experiences. Actually, we are preparing our country for the bigger challenges in future.
Great. I think I'm going to try and club two questions together. Over here, we've got a question from Paul Patel, who's asking that how early is this kind of program set in advance, including the topics when we're planning for an event like G20? And then we've got Inder Singh, who's asking about, are there any next big events lined up for India like G20?
Well, we observed how G20 meetings were held by a previous presidency. So we watched closely how Indonesia was conducting it. Before Indonesia, it was Italy, but Italy was that time many meetings also happened virtually. And then Saudi Arabia was entirely the virtual. So we decided to have it in a physical mode. We had some learnings from the Indonesia. The tracks, subject matters are broadly there. How do you spell out the agenda items or orientation? That is important. For instance, there is a topic on culture. Now, India brought in the recovery of cultural assets abroad into discussion, because we know that we were colonized for many years, and many artifacts of immense value were plundered, and they are lying somewhere in Western museums. So we thought that we'll make this the important plank on discussion on cultural assets, that the countries where these assets are there, they have a moral responsibility to return those cultural artifacts to countries from where they're taken. So you can understand how presidency can develop some agenda items in a manner that also takes your national narrative and national priority to global stage. Now that we have brought in and we have discussed, and there is a paragraph on the G20 that gives us a diplomatic handle to continue discussion on this topic in the UNESCO or in other forum for many years. I mean, that is an example to share with. So while the work streams we inherit, sometimes we have discretion to expand or reduce. We added a work stream on startup. This was earlier subsumed under Business 20. But we thought India, having the third position in terms of startup ecosystem, let's focus on the problems of startup companies and that the younger generation. So we had this startup engagement group, and the Brazil is going to carry this forward. That will benefit us. So these are the manners in which national priorities are also championed with the support of the G20 member countries.
Great. So I'm sure there is a moral responsibility for all countries that hold artifacts that does not belong to them. And definitely there's a Kohinoor somewhere that most Indians would like to see back in their home country if we were ever able to successfully manage that. I'd like to also invite some of our friends who want to ask questions live through video, verbally rather than typing anything in the chat box if you have trouble doing that. So please feel free to speak, raise your hands through emojis, and Gary will put you on.
Gary, this is Suneet. How are you?
Oh, hi, Suneet. Yes.
Namaskar, Muktesh ji. Your question is that we've seen a G20 expand to G21 with the inclusion of Africa. I'm wondering if you see Oceania being included at some point of time in the future, please.
I don't know. Well, in future, but whenever the meetings takes place in a particular neighborhood, there is a focus. I believe in Indonesia, when it chaired the G20, they had invited the Pacific Island Forum to its meeting. Australia is already there as an oceanic member country from that region. But what I can say that some of the issues which are confronting Oceania are taken up vigorously, the climate change, disaster resilience, and India has put a new working track on disaster resilient infrastructure. And that topic is directly relevant to many member countries in the Pacific region, island states. Whether it becomes a member or not, that we have to see. Presidency to India will come after 20 years. But in the meanwhile, let's see how things pan out.
Thank you very much. Just one more question, if you don't mind, sir, which is compare and contrast the relationship that New Zealand has with India and the relationship that Australia has, keeping in mind the Quad arrangement.
The first comparison is both relations are important in its own way. What has happened in case of Australia, and when I was in New Zealand, I used to mention about this. Australia is looking at a very broad-based strategic relationship with India. New Zealand entry point towards India was in the beginning generally through the trade, the prism. But now I believe, for example, when we discuss, and also in the INZBC, the sense I got that we need broad basing of diplomatic relations between the two countries, the strategic areas, and then, of course, trade and commerce, and based on intense people-to-people relations. After COVID-19, there have been many visits. As we are speaking, we have our Minister of State in New Zealand. From New Zealand side, I saw many visits, and the happening of India-New Zealand Business Summit in Delhi. It was first, I believe. This kind of interaction will be able to give fillip to the development of, how to say, more dynamic and broad-based relations between the two countries.
Well, I'll just go to a question by Basan. He's asking, who are the G20 invitees? This time, I think there were 9 countries. Basant is right. I think there were 9 countries. But, sir, would you like to add to how the invitees selected and who were the invitees this year?
It's upon the host country, the host member country, depending on its own strategic and regional interests. So in case of India, there will careful selection of countries, but they focus on Africa. For the first time, we had many more invitee countries from the Africa. So we had Nigeria, we had Egypt, we had Mauritius, apart from African Union. From the neighborhood, it was also from the South Asia region, which is Bangladesh, and from the Gulf region, we had Oman. But there are some permanent invitee countries. So Singapore is generally had been invited by all. So they have acquired a nickname called permanent invitees. So Singapore was there from Southeast Asia. Indonesia, in any case, is a member country. ASEAN was there. So when we're looking at the special invitee countries, a careful choice was made by India to have them attend G20 meeting, which will also help in promotion of regional and strategic interests of India. In terms of international organizations, we also specially invited ADB, Asian Development Bank, and 2 Delhi-based international organizations. One is called International Solar Alliance, which was launched in 2015. They participated as a special invitee organization. And then CDRI, which is Coalition of Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. This organization is also championed by India and based in Delhi. It has, once again, both these organizations have a deep connect, and they champion the concerns of the climate change and related themes. So their participation was very important. In fact, out of Global Biofuels Alliance, there is some concrete initiative, which will be housed and championed by International Solar Alliance.
Great. I think we've almost reached the end of this session, and I think it's time to invite Ned to give his word of thanks. But I think before that, there is a question from a lighter note, a question from Ned's association, probably by Ned. It's asking, when do we expect you to visit New Zealand, sir? And I think that everybody wants to know that. After you answer that, Ned, you take over.
Well, certainly I look forward to my next trip to New Zealand whenever my position and my work allows. But I miss New Zealand, and it's a great emotional connect once again with friends and well-wishers.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sandeep. Wow, what a webinar that was. Every second we waited at the beginning is definitely worth its gold. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of New Zealand Indian Central Association and New Zealand India Business Council, I stand before you all with an immense gratitude and a pleasure to extend our heartfelt thanks to each and every one of you for joining this enlightening webinar focused on India's G20 Summit update. Our special thanks to our very own Special Secretary G20 India, Muktesh Pardeshi ji, for sharing his valuable insights, expertise, and in-depth knowledge on India's role in the G20 and the important updates it brings to the global stage. So your contributions have enriched our understanding and perspective on this critical international forum. Thank you so much. I would also like to extend our gratitude to all the participants who have took time out this afternoon out of their busy schedule to be part of this informative session. Our sincere appreciation goes out to the INZBC Chair, Michael Fox, for his leadership. Michael, you're doing a wonderful job for us, and we sincerely appreciate your contributions. We also thank the INZBC General Secretary, Gary Gupta, and New Zealand Indian Central Association Business Committee Chair, Deepak Bana, who have worked tirelessly behind the scene to make sure the smooth conduct of this webinar, and we forgive you for the oversight at the beginning, gentlemen. Your dedication and effort have made this event a resounding success. Thank you so much for your efforts. Can I also acknowledge the efforts of Indian High Commissioner, Her Excellency Nita Bosanji, and her team in Wellington for extending their support every time we require. Her Excellency, as our Chair Michael Fox mentioned before, she is busy with the Minister's visit to New Zealand. However, she has extended her best wishes for a successful webinar today. It is also both an honor and a privilege to acknowledge the esteemed presence of Sir Anand Satyanan in our webinar today. Sir, your presence truly adds a distinguished dimension to this gathering. We are deeply grateful for you taking the time to join us and for gracing this occasion with your presence. Thank you so much. We also thank Sandeep Sharma for perfectly crafting and moderating this session. Sandeep, you have done a wonderful job. We thank you so much for your input in organizing and running today's webinar. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, today's webinar has been an enlightening and enriching experience for all of us. We leave here with a deeper understanding of India's contributions to the G20 and its impact on the global stage. Thank you once again for your participation and continued support. And INZBC and NZICA Business Chair Deepak Bana, we look forward to you both organizing many more of these meaningful webinars. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much
for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Muktesh. That was great.
Thank you, friends.
Thank you.
And apologies
again, sir, for the confusion for you. Thank you.
Not at all. And thank you so much, Gary, Narendra Bhai, Sandeep, and all friends. It's great to see you again. And have a good evening.